Greetings and welcome to the Stoic Gamer podcast. My name's Michael Bolton. In this podcast, I talk to players at all different levels of the hobby about their experience going to competitive events, whether it's their first time or whether they're a seasoned old timer like myself. I discuss the events we're going to, I discuss the events we've been to, and I talk about everything from army building, rules queries, happenings on the table to hotel disasters and culinary and gastronomic accidents, all part of the hobby and all part of visiting different parts of the country and the world as part of our fantastic 40k hobby. If you like this kind of content and you want to hear more, please let me know. If it's on YouTube, please just leave something in the comments. I'll always get back to you if I can. And if you're listening on any other kind of platform such as Spotify, do leave me a message. I can get back. Greetings, fellow Stoic gamers. I'm speaking to you with a cold and a blocked up nose, so apologies for any spluttering that takes place. I've just got back from a 3-game, one-day event held by the Battlefield Birmingham guys at Halesowen College in the UK. What a good day. Just a single event. It's within driving distance of where I live, so I could get there in 40 minutes, have a whole day's gaming, and then return home. What could be better? I'll tell you what could be better. The venue is terrific. There's enough space for everybody. There was 30 tables, I think. I could be wrong there. No, there were 30 players. That's right. 15 odd tables. In fact, I'm probably wrong there. I'd have to look it up. There was a lot. There was a lot of people there. Best thing about the event, though, is that they have a bistro built on site next door. You can walk in, have your beers. Food is included at lunchtime, which is really nice. And this time we even got puddings. So there was a main course. I had a crispy chicken wrap with all the bits and bobs, chips, and for pudding, I had a really nice vanilla cheesecake, all included. Can't go wrong, can you? And I think the whole thing was 20 quid. So really good. Venue's good. Organisation is great. Harry Allen organises it. It's a super little event. Can't recommend it enough. I've mentioned it before on the channel. So if you get the chance and you fancy some nice games, sometimes with some really top players, a lot of the times with just the local players, everybody knows what they're doing. The standard's good. The armies are super. It's a good day out. And if anybody's reluctant or a bit scared to go for a 2-day event, it's a great way to dip your toe in the tournament scene, water, and just have a 3 games, bit of fun. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, spoiler alert, I won one, I lost one, and then I narrowly lost another one. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of those games in the order they happened. Tell you what my learnings were, tell you what the armies I fought were, tell me what I thought, and I'll explain to you why I am both disappointed and optimistic at the same time. So stand by your beds. I knew a couple of days before the event that I'd been drawn against an Aldari army. I looked at the list that was available on Best Coast Pairings, and I was quite surprised. It wasn't your normal 2 or 3 Night Spinners, Inari, couple of Warp Spider units, perhaps Fuegan, and 10 Wraith Guard to stand in the middle of the field and stop you doing anything. I was interested. It was nice. I'm looking at the list, and the list was an Autarch, a Farseer, Death Jester, Solitaire, Dark Reapers, 2 Fire Prisms, a Night Spinner, just the one, Shadow Spectres, Shroud Runners, 2x2 Sky Weavers. We'll talk about those later. 2x5 Sweeping Hawks, a Viper, 2 singular War Walkers, and some Warp Spiders. A lot of units, obviously playing the mission here, all of it glass hammer. A lot of that can do you a lot of damage, but a lot of it will die in a heap. So when we saw the scenario, and the scenario was the one where you get points for killing more, Purge the Foe, I think it's called. I was thinking, yep, I can probably kill more than him each turn, and I did, which was pretty good, which was pretty good. But his list was really good, and the guy I was playing, a guy called Paul, knew exactly what he was doing. So we sat down to play. We discussed what each army was, the terrain we put out. Super duper. We all deployed. Now I'm using my Hypercrypt Legion, so I'm hoping to take things off the table, drop them in, move them around, get angles on things to kill them, because in this particular scenario especially, I wanted to be arriving, delete a unit or two, and then disappear again at the end of Paul's turn. That more or less happened all the way through. In terms of Purge the Foe, at the end of the game, I'd got 50 points. That's the maximum. And Paul had got 48. So this was pretty close. Unfortunately, in the secondaries, we were both pretty well geared up for secondaries, but he simply had 18 units. At the end of the game, by the way, this is so close. At the end of the game, I had 2 Catans and 2 Death Marks left on the table. He had a couple of characters, 1 Fire Prism, and the Night Spinner. And that was it. So controlling objectives at that point was getting challenging. What happened here? The game ebbed and flowed. It was a really good game. At the beginning of the game, my secondaries were awful, and I drew attempting target and area denial, which I simply couldn't do on turn 1, especially as I was going first. It was just a waste. Paul's first turn, he drew engage in all fronts and secure no man's land, which he did easily. So that's bop, 10 points for him. He's 10 points ahead already. So it wasn't good. It was close all the way through. And then on turn 3, he pulled, no, sorry, turn 4, he pulled capture enemy outpost and was able to steal my home objective for 8 points. The same turn, I stole his home objective with the Nightbringer, killing all his Dark Reapers that were holding it. And guess which secondary mission Paul pulled? Yep, he got capture enemy outpost and got 8 points. The second half of the game, he started to pull, the last 2 turns, he pulled some absolutely rubbish secondaries. So on turn 5, he got absolutely none for attempting target and bring it down, because he couldn't kill the Catans. And I got 10. So overall, it was close. It was always going to be close. And the final score was 89 to Paul and 82 to me. A 7-point difference, and he got 8 points for capture enemy outpost. So if I'd have got capture enemy outpost at the same time, the score would have been slightly reversed. Really close game. What gave me a lot of confidence here was, although I'd lost, the list worked like I wanted it to. I was able to focus fire and kill all of these small units. There was one particular turn where he dropped in his swooping hawks, delighted in telling me that they were going to disappear off as soon as he got the chance, and I was able to just delete them with pistol fire from the Triarch Praetorians and a hail of Gauss blaster fire from a unit of Immortals. Both of them just dead. Not even a doubt about it. They just disappeared, evaporated. So great game. Paul was great. Went on to get, I think, 3rd place. He won all 3. So I'm feeling a bit disappointed that I lost by such a small margin. But at the same time, I'm also feeling pretty confident that the list is working how I want it to. So I'm going into the second game having lost the first one. Not an ideal position. And now I'm going to be fighting Dan Moody. I've known Dan for 15 years or so. He is I think he's still the co-organizer of the event itself. He's worked with Harry for years to organize the previous iterations of Battlefield Birmingham at different locations. But he's there, and he has Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights, yeah, 2 big ones. He's got the Desecrator and the Rampager. Then he's got 2 executioners, 2 huntsmen, 2 carnivores, and then the requisite number of little bits and bobs. He's got the 2 Nurgling units, the blue scribes, and the changeling for doing mission play. This game was a complete disaster. I played it wrong. I know that now, but there's learnings to be had. Turn 1, I redeployed some units using the Deceiver's ability. This worked okay. I didn't want my monolith to be shot off the table on turn 1, so I moved it. Unfortunately, he was still able to draw a bead on it with his big knight's big gun, which did 13 wounds on the first shouting, despite the fact I gave it a 4 invulnerable save and failed them all. So I'm down to 10 wounds. I'm not feeling very comfortable. There's a bit of to-ing and froing. He moves forward with virtually his entire army towards my monolith. I shuffle the monolith so I can just see his very aggressive charging knight. I think it's the Rampager. I shoot at it and do very little. I think I did 4 wounds to it with the death rays. I was hoping to potentially wreck it, but it's okay because I have within charge range now the Nightbringer and the Deceiver, who are both going to charge it, because right behind it are 4 small knights. So my plan is charge the Rampager, wreck it, and then consolidate into at least one of those little knights each with the Deceiver and the Nightbringer. Guess what? Totally whiff. Don't even kill the Rampager. I think I'll do another 5 or 6 wounds. I might have done 10 extra wounds to it. But I'm now left standing there because in his second turn, it's only turn 2, he pulls out of combat and absolutely evaporates the Nightbringer, the Deceiver, and the monolith. Boom, 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 gone. My turn 2, all of a sudden the heart's ripped out of my army, and now I only have strength 5 weapons to deal with toughness 6 toughness 12 little knights and 2 big knights. It's really all over already. We go on, we play the game through. I try and hop around and do secondaries, but to be honest, it's not going to happen. So the final result there was a very disappointing 93 to Dan, 39 to me. Not happy at all. So I've lost 2 games. It's a little bit depressing, but I'm trying to rationalize it. And I think I've got a kind of idea what I could have done in that game. And what I should have done, I think, is instead of just shuffling the monolith to one side so it couldn't be seen by anybody except for one knight and then killing it, and then failing to kill the knight, what I could have done is pulled it into strategic reserve and brought it in again in a location where it could get a bead on a couple of the small knights maybe. I didn't need to leave the Catans there. They could have disappeared into reserves, and I could have just stretched him. So, okay, I would have lost board control for a while, but I may have been able to drop in and just pick off a couple of knights, start chipping wounds off, and by the end of the game, may well have been able to make something of it. But it's a live and learn thing. I'm going to talk about vehicles at the end of the podcast because I think that's an issue for me, and I'd be interested to know what anybody thinks. So game 3 arrives. We've had lunch, we've had dinner, we've had a couple of pints. I've fought 2 armies with some vehicles in it, and I'm beginning to get a bit nervous about vehicles because I fought Alderi, and the Aldari had 5 vehicles, including a couple of fire prisms and a night spinner, and they're not easy. They're not as easy as you think to wreck. So that was scarred me psychologically. Then I fought a knight list with 8 knights, 2 big ones, 6 little ones, and they're chunky. They're chunky and they're tough, and that wasn't as easy as I'd thought. So that went bad. So imagine my surprise and my chagrin when on the last game I'm facing a Tau army with only 15 vehicles in it. Oh my lord. What on earth is going on here? But you know I win this because I told you at the beginning. So it's interesting. I thought Dave, I haven't seen Dave for years, and it was great to play him again. He had just two characters, Anvar at the back to stand on his objective, and then a Cadre Fireblade. He had 2 tens of Breaches in 2 Devilfish, 2 tens of Kroot Carnivores, 5 Vespids, 2 times 4 Kroot Hounds, 4 Crisis Battle Suits in a unit, 3 Hammerheads, three Piranhas in units of 1, a Riptide, 2 Tetras, 15 vehicles. Okay, 4 of them were suits, but still, that's 11 vehicles if you don't count the suits. But they have the vehicle keyword, so there you go. So he deploys this on the battlefield, and it's like a car park. Oh no, I'm thinking this is going to be bad. Yes, it was, except that he was unable to kill the Nightbringer. Now, I had deployed forward with my flayed ones when I was infiltrating. So I'd infiltrated onto an objective. He moved the Riptide, a Devilfish full of breaches, and one of the Piranhas over into that corner to deal with it. And I'd followed it up going first with the Nightbringer. So he moved up. The Riptide failed to kill the 5 flayed ones on the objective with its shooting. In fact, I don't think it killed anything. It really whiffed. So he then unloaded his breaches from the Devilfish. They all got out. They then easily blew apart the flayed ones. But in my turn, I was able to do 2 things. I had taken off my unit of Tesla firing Immortals, and they, along with the other unit of Immortals, were able to kill the Devilfish just simply with 0 and -1 AP fire, just with weight of numbers. Killed it. Or it might have gone down to 1 win, but whatever, I killed it the next turn, but it was certainly very, very poorly. The Nightbringer charged the 10 breaches and wrecked them, just killed them straight off, no problem. So that corner was kind of done. I was envisaging that corner being the Riptide and the Nightbringer punching each other in the face for a couple of turns. Didn't quite happen that way. On the other flank, on my right flank, I moved my Monolith by taking it off after Dave's first turn, put it behind a building where it could only see one of his Hammerheads, did a couple of bits of shooting, didn't really do anything until the next round when I blew it up. Then there was the rest of the game was all about the center objective. It was all about who could control that. He had a unit of Vespids drop onto it. So I popped through a wall with 10 Immortals, shot them, and then used my 5-inch after shooting move donated by the Chronomancer to move back behind the wall. So nobody was on it. He then tried the same thing again with a unit of Hounds. That didn't work, did the same thing. I then needed the objective, so I stepped onto it and stayed on it. At that point, he shot everything in his army at my guys. Now, this is interesting because everything in his army hits on 4s unless it's guided. Anything that hits on 4s against the Chronomancer's unit is actually hitting on 5s because it's -1 to hit. That unit of 10 Immortals standing in the open with Imitate the Stormlord and the Chronomancer survived 2 rounds of shooting from two Hammerheads, 2 Tetras, 2 Piranhas, sorry, a Devilfish, a unit of Kroot Carnivores. It was charged by the unit of Kroot Carnivores and a unit of Hounds. It killed the Hounds and it got the Carnivores down to 3. It did a great job. It did an absolutely great job. And I think that was the key the key thing. We both scored the same on take and hold. We both scored 35 on primary, and I was able to squeak a victory by 6 points because I got 38 on secondaries. And basically, the last two turns, I got secure no man's land and defend stronghold. That's 8. And the last turn, I got overwhelming force, where I was able to kill a unit on an objective and engage in all fronts, which was great for me because those little units that were down to 1 or 2 men after casualties, I could pick up at the end of his turn and just drop in onto the different quarters. So I was able to score in the last 2 rounds. I scored 18 points in secondaries. Poor old Dave, he drew defense stronghold. He got that for 3. He got extend battle lines. He got that for 5. But then in his last turn, he drew engage on all fronts, which he couldn't score because he got so few units left. And he drew assassination, which he managed to score for 5 points by killing the unit that was on the center of the table. But he'd spent so much of his effort killing that I'd able to make sure that I got the rest of the table squared away. So I scored 18 in the last 2 rounds. He scored 13. Those 5 points made a difference because the final score here was 83-77 to me. So that was all about attrition. I was able to keep killing things when he was starting to run out of units, despite the fact he had a car park full of vehicles. Great event. 3 great games, 3 great opponents, a great venue, good food. Everything was great. What did I learn? I learned firstly that the Hypercrypt Legion is it's a detachment that rewards skillful play. I haven't had enough reps with it yet, and I think I can do better, even as it is. Second thing, vehicles are a lot more common than you think they are. In my friendly meta, a lot of my opponents tend to be infantry based. So I'm not really used to fighting the vehicles. And now when I face them, I faced how many? I faced 6 vehicles in the first game, 8 in the second, and 15 in the third. That's a lot more. I've got 1 vehicle. Okay, I've got a couple of monsters, but I've got 1 vehicle. And I've only got 1 unit with a dedicated anti-tank shooting, which is the monolith. I feel as though I might need some more. In the before the balance update, the previous balance update, the FAQ, Necrons with Immortals were able to get devastating wounds. Now you can't. So all of those massive numbers of shooting that I can get are all at strength 5 with -1 with the Gauss or 0 AP with Tesla. And it's great against a lot of things, but it is pointless against knights, for example. As I found out in my second game, as soon as my anti-tank was gone and my close combat was gone with the Catans being killed, I'm left with lots of shooting, but it's all strength 5. Most of it is 0 or -1 AP. It becomes a hiding to nothing. I may have to invest in something more anti-tanky just to give me a second option. That's something for me to consider. Overall, though, great. My list, just for those of you who were interested, had a Monolith, Deceiver, Nightbringer, 2 units of Immortals, 1 with Blasters, 1 with Tesla. The one with Tesla had a Overlord with the Arisen Tyrant enhancement so that he could re-roll all of their hits when they arrived from reserves. And it came with a Plasmancer so that I was having exploding 5s, which was really nice. And he had the enhancement to give them deep strike as well, so they could arrive anywhere on the table instead of from the edge of the table. The other unit of Immortals had Blasters, the Chronomancer, and Imitate the Stormlord to give me extra command points, which I never really needed. I always had too many. Having said that, every time I've played a game without him, the funny thing is I've run out. So I think if I could get a character that gave me half a command point a turn, I'd be happy. But you can't. So that was about it for me. I had a couple of single locust destroyers for sitting on objectives. I had some death marks, and I had Pistol Pete, the hex mark destroyer. So what am I feeling like? I won one, lost one, and essentially, no, this isn't true. There were two that were so close they were effectively draws, and then one where I got massacred. So two are potential wins, if you want to put an optimistic spin on it. What happened? Well, I think it's pretty simple. The games that I lost, even though they were close, I lost my monolith on turn one. On turn one against the Eldari, it got popped by two fire prisms shooting at it, which wouldn't have done it on their own. But I did mention at the beginning of the podcast that we'll talk about the Skyweavers and their haywire shenanigans. They'd done just enough wounds so that the damage that got through from the fire prisms killed it. I had to put it somewhere where I could dominate the central objective, but that left me open to retaliatory fire, and it went mad. It went wrong, and I was hoping to just last one turn. If I'd lasted one turn, I'd have definitely disappeared from there and appeared somewhere else, but I needed that one turn of shooting. Against the knights, again, I could have disappeared my monolith, but I didn't, and that was foolish, and it got shot. The fact that my Catans whiffed their attacks is pretty irrelevant. Once the monolith is dead, 4 of my 6 stratagems don't work anymore. I'm left with 2, and a lot of the shenanigans I can do is not great. The other thing I've learned about the Hypercrypt Legion is it doesn't punch. It really doesn't. It moves about. It can take out the glass hammer, the small units, using clever positioning and gameplay. But in a stand-up knockdown fight, you ain't going to win with a Hypercrypt Legion, so don't do it. Jump about, jump about. Sounds like a song. I can do better with that. That's just learning. And then I need to do something about my luck. There was one particular round against the Knights where the little indirect shots from the small Knights targeted my death marks. They did 5 wounds with my normal save of a 3. I rolled 5 1s and 2s. I had to actually stop and take a photograph so I can show everybody because they wouldn't believe me. It was one of those. So when things started to go downhill, they really started to go downhill. So overall, what would I change? That's a very good question. I think there are some options. I think I might consider replacing Imitek the Stormlord with either nothing or with a Overlord. But frankly, I think that's 100 points I could save. And the reason I put him in is because some of the key stratagems cost me 2 command points. The hyperphasic withdraw 1 counts as 2. So if I want to move a unit that's been shot at and taken a casualty, I can move it. So it's almost as good as Phantasm, but not quite. And that costs 2. So I wouldn't like to be without, but on the other hand, it's 100 points. So second thing is, how would I fit something more anti-tanky in there? Well, I could, instead of having single locust destroyers for 30 points each, for 50 points each, I can put in single heavy destroyers. So that's going to be 40 points to put in 2 of those. So I could lose Imitek and put in 3 heavy locust destroyers, doing flat 6 damage against tanks. Anyway, the bottom line is, this is about practice. This is about practice against different armies. I was terrified of the Tau, and I beat them. I was terrified of the Eldari. I nearly beat them. I wasn't worried by the Knights because the last time I fought Knights, I had the Silent King and a unit of 3 locust heavy destroyers, and I blew them apart. This time, not so good. So, sounds like I've got something to think about. Thoroughly enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed listening to me prattle on for half an hour, like, share, tell your friends, and whatever you do, make sure that you get along to one of the Battlefield Birmingham events in Halesowen. If you're anywhere in the Midlands, Anywhere in the south of the country, because it's just off the M5, give it a go if you get a chance. I can't stress that enough. So hopefully, if I don't see you there, I'll see you on the ice.